Hey guys, it's Nanomachines. And so, you really want to learn the Transformers trading card game then, huh? Well, you come to the right place. This video will go over the basics. How to set up a game, build a deck, how a game plays out. The more advanced stuff will go into the more advanced video, which I will be putting a link to in the description below. The more elaborate rules will be in that one. For instance, what exactly do combiners do? What are combiners? How do combiners work? And many other things. So, how this video itself will be broken down, though, is by various concepts in various sections. For instance, we'll be starting on choosing a team, and then we will also be choosing the decks, and then we will be explaining what certain things do. And at the very end, we'll be walking you through your first few turns of a game. All of these sections will be pasted in the description below, so if you really want to just listen to what exactly upgrades are, or what exactly a character is, then just skip to the corresponding timestamp. That said, sit down, strap in, and check your Cosmotrons, because we're about to get educational up in here. So, to start, we need a team of characters. Like in Transformers Prime, you have a massive cast of characters that you'll cherry-pick your favorite ones from, and then ignore the rest. Instead of studio budget bogging you down, though, it will actually just be a star cost bogging you down in your picks for characters. In this case, a point limit of 25. Now, something you might have noticed on your character cards is in their alternate modes, they have these little stars at the bottom. Some stars are like 5, others are 13. There's some in between. Some characters have 25 stars. These stars are the points, and you can have a combination of those of anything so long as they don't exceed 25. So, you can have something that is exactly 25, like this, or you can have something that's slightly less, like this, or you can have something like this that is just a bad list. Like, why aren't you playing more characters? You're like some kind of masochist? Anyway, you have potentially just hundreds and thousands of options in terms of your character compositions, just so long as they don't go over the point limit. A secondary limit that you have on the characters you can play is the character limit. Now, as a quick little explanation for that, it's basically you can't play 2 of the same card, but you can play multiple of the same character. So for instance, you couldn't play 2 Bumblebee Legendary Scout on one team, but you could play a Legendary Scout and a Trusted Lieutenant. They're 2 different cards, but they're 2 of the same character. So your team could look like this, or it could look like this, but it can't look like this. So, what exactly is a good team composition? Would you prefer a 4-wide, a 2-wide, I don't know, a 1-tall character? I don't know. It really does depend on what you want to do with the characters you have in your list. For instance, Insecticons is a very aggressive build. Insecticons like to hit hard, hit fast, and die instantly. Like you look at them wrong and then they just blow up. However, you have characters like Nemesis Prime that really like the long game. Like, he wants you to just burn through your deck, don't take any damage, and then eventually just become ultra powerful. There isn't really a full guide of what I can recommend in terms of partners, because there are so many different potential combinations that it's somewhat impossible. Like, I would be talking for the rest of the month. You have your more centralized focus, like for instance, Optimus Prime with cars, or you have something that's, I don't know, more tall, where it's Optimus Prime, Nemesis Prime in the same list. It doesn't really matter too much in like what combination of stars you have, but it does matter what characters you have. For instance, Optimus Prime can supplement Nemesis Prime in terms of draw, in terms of damage, in terms of survivability. Optimus Prime can pretty much do everything, and Nemesis Prime fills in what Optimus Prime can't. Which brings me to another point. If you might have noticed, Optimus Prime and Nemesis Prime are not on the same side. You have both an Autobot and a Decepticon on the same list. Now normally they would be butting heads. Transformers, again, is about a million-year-long, actually several million-year-long war between two races of robots. That's not going to end anytime soon. So, where does that leave the card game? Is there just a rule where you can only play Autobots and Decepticons? No. You can play them both on the same team if you really wanted to. Now the question is, should you? Because there are pros and cons to playing a mixed comp. For instance, if you play all Autobots, you can play a card called Confidence, which only works when you have all Autobots. That being said, you could also play all Decepticons and have Swindled, which does the same thing, but for Decepticons. Certain cards can only be attached to Autobots. Certain cards can only be attached to Decepticons. Certain things heal Decepticons and damage Autobots. It really depends on what you want to do. But generally speaking, there is enough synergy in these cards to warrant playing a mono-faction list. And I definitely think that I would start with a mono-faction list, because it's the easiest to pick up. Speaking of mono-faction, what about mono-alt mode? If you notice, tanks have a lot of synergy with tanks. Planes have a lot of synergy with planes. Bugs have a lot of synergy with bugs. When you're first starting out, it is a fantastic idea to just look at alternate modes and say, well, that one looks like this one. Maybe they go together. Who knows? Only when you get the general game sense to understand the pros and cons of certain characters, I would just stick to alternate modes. When you feel like you have a grasp on it, then you can look at the cards, you can say, oh, well, even though this one's actually an Insecticon, he works pretty well with my other plane list. Hey, wait a minute. Maybe just because Sunstorm's a plane doesn't mean he belongs in a plane list. Or maybe just because Flame War's a motorcycle and a Decepticon, she could actually work pretty well on my truck list. There are a ton of combinations. It might be a little overwhelming at first, which is why I say start small and work your way up. The old parable goes, how did that little ant eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Now that we've chosen our characters and our team, we can make our deck. But first, we need to talk about battle cards. Now, you might be wondering, what exactly are battle cards? Well, that's a simple enough conundrum to solve. It's one of these. It's got a cool back to it. It's got cool artwork. I really like this one. It's Bombing Run. It's one of my favorites. So, just threw that across the room. So, what exactly are battle cards? There are plenty of things that are different nuances to them. For instance, their classifications. There are two separate types of battle cards. Actions and upgrades. Actions are something a lot like sorceries from Magic or supporters from Pokemon. You can only play them on your turn, and when you do, they usually have a really powerful effect. Upgrades, however, are something more akin to an equipment enchantment from Magic or a tool from Pokemon. The things that enhance your character, give them more utility, more damage, more survivability. They do a bunch of stuff. Now, let's talk about action cards first. Action cards, like supporters from Pokemon, can really only be played during your turn before you attack. and they usually have extremely powerful effects or utilities. Some actions can draw cards, other actions can scrap upgrades, other actions can do more powerful things, like untapping characters, I don't know, how about raising the dead? Like my boy, I Still Function. Anyway, action cards are usually powerful, but once you play them, they're gone. You use their effect, and at the end of the turn, they're scrapped. And as a side note, scrapped is, in this game, the Transformers term for discarding. So if you scrap something, it just goes to the discard pile. So, they have a nice one-time use thing. So you would use them, toss them away, and you're probably never going to see them again unless the game lasts really long. But that's another thing. That's another thing that we'll get to later, because you do reshuffle your deck. This is a lot unlike upgrades. Upgrades are a lot like a mix between energy cards and tools from Pokemon. Once during a turn, you can play an upgrade and attach it to one of your characters. And usually they are very beneficial for you. For instance, Grenade Launcher can give you +4 attack, which is monstrous. Reinforced Plating can give you Tough 2, which is also powerful. Databank draws you another card to start up each of your turns. Crash Landing does 1 billion damage to something. But, if you noticed, there are 3 different types of upgrades. For instance, Weapon, Utility, and Armor. Each of these have a slot on a character. Each character has 3 slots: their weapon slot, their utility slot, and their armor slot. There can only be 1 upgrade in each slot. So for instance, if you had someone with a flamethrower attached to them already, in order to attach that grenade launcher from your hand, you would first have to scrap the flamethrower, which you, of course, can do by attaching that other weapon. Whenever you play another card onto a character, it always scraps whatever's there before in that slot. So, for instance, you could play a flamethrower when there's already a databank attached because it's a weapon and there's already utility. But if you wanted to attach, say, an Energon Axe, while you already had a grenade launcher attached to you, you would have to scrap the grenade launcher. Certain characters, though, break that rule a little bit. For instance, Dreadwing has 2 of every weapon slot. Or Predaking has 5 weapon slots. I'm terrified. Upgrades stay on that character until they're knocked out. If they are at all knocked out, you would scrap all the upgrades and send them to your scrap pile. And then you would, of course, put your character in the KO pile. Pretty much, it's kind of there forever, unless your opponent eventually scraps it. Which there is plenty of upgrade scrapping in the game. For instance, Ramming Speed, Vaporize, Bashing Shield, Drill Arms. There are a lot of things that scrap upgrades on your opponent's characters. And just by that token, there are a lot of things that scrap upgrades on yours. So it's always wise to pay attention to what you attach, and when, and just wonder to yourself, is this the right time? Do I need this now, or is there something better to play? You can only play 1 of each type of card from your hand. 1 action and 1 upgrade. You can't play 3 bombing runs and then 4 grenade launchers. First off, it's illegal. That's a crime. But second off, not only can you not play more than 1 of an action or 1 of an upgrade during your turn, you also can't play more than 3 of a certain card in your deck. Your deck has a max capacity of, well, infinity. You can have as many cards as you want in it, just so long as they don't go under 40. But, that being said, you have an absolute maximum amount of card types you can play of 3. So, you can only play 3 Grenade Launcher, and you couldn't play 4 Bombing Run. But you could play 2 Bombing Run and 1 Photon Bomb. You can build your deck however you want it. Do you want it focused on actions? Do you want it focused on upgrades? Do you want it balanced? It's however you want it to be built. I recommend a balance between upgrades and actions. I mean, what's better than playing more cards from your hand every turn, right? So, just keep in mind the card limit, where you can only play 3 of a certain copy of a card. And keep in mind that you can only have a minimum of 40 cards in your deck. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, but Nanomachines, what happens when I run out of cards in my deck? I'm certainly going to be playing a lot of them. Maybe if I draw them all, what happens? Well, that's easy. Once your deck runs out, you instantly reshuffle your discard pile back in your deck. All that scrap, boom, it's ready to be used again. And that's a good thing too, because there are a lot of things that mill a lot of cards in your deck. Don't be too attached to that 40 cards. You're going to be seeing all of them. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, now Nanomachines, well, how do you win this game? If you can't mill your opponent out, then how do you win? A staring contest? No! So, even though I would lose that staring contest very clearly, no, that's not how you win the game. You win the game by knocking out all of your opponent's characters. If you notice, every character has HP. Every character has an attack and defense. Sometimes that defense stat is 0, sometimes the attack stat is 0. But the HP is always above 0. Certain characters have extremely high HP. Others have extremely low HP. But every character still gets to attack. Now, during your turn, you get to attack. Now, if you noticed, some weapons give our characters more attack stats or more defense. So let's work with that a little bit. Say it's during your turn. You have 3 characters in the field, and you say, you know what, I want to attack with Starscream, respectable 4 attack. That 4 attack will now be sent into, for instance, Wheeljack with his 1 defense. Now, normally you would say, oh, well, that's just 3 damage. What do you do about that, right? But this is Transformers, and there are always variables involved. For instance, every single combat, you flip the top 2 cards of your deck. These top 2 cards, if you notice, on both actions and upgrades, there is a little icon on the top right. Either a blue, an orange, or a white. In some cases, there are 2 blues, 2 oranges, a blue and an orange. Sometimes there's a green one, and we're going to get the green one in a little bit. But the blue and the orange are defense and offense, respectively. What does the white do? It's called a crit. And that means a critical hit is you flip 2 extra cards at the top of your deck. You can even crit on your defense. So, when Wheeljack defends, and he flips the top 2 cards of his deck, and there's a white and a blue, he can also flip the top 2 cards from his deck again, and then add up the amount. But, here's the funny thing about Starscream. He has this effect called Bold. Now, Bold and Tough are 2 effects that increase the amount of cards you flip off the top of your deck. Bold is flipping an extra card. Bold 2 is flipping 2. Bold stacks with itself. So, if Starscream had, for instance, Flamethrower, which gives him Bold 2, he would thus have Bold 4. That Bold 4 would be 4 extra cards at the top of your deck. This can compound really quickly when you have Dino Chomp, which gives a character +5 Bold. Or combined with a Power Sword, which is another 3. That's 8. Grimlock's ability can give 3 more, so that's 11. There are so many ways to stack Bold. And there are some ways to stack Tough. Generally speaking, in this case, Starscream does not have an upgrade attached to him, but he does have innate Bold 2. So, he flipped his white pip, but now he flips 2 more for Bold. So, he has 6 cards on the field. The top 2 were a blue, an orange, another orange, another orange, a white, and a blue. That's 3 extra damage that he's going to do. So, that is from 4 to 7. You add the amount of colors for your offense to your offensive stat. So, if you flip 3 orange, you add 3. If you flip 5 orange, say with your double orange pips, you add that 5 to your attack. The same applies to defending. Say, for instance, Wheeljack had a reinforced plating on him, which gives him Tough 2. He flips a blue, a white, then Tough 2 activates. He flips a double blue, and then another blue. And then the white pip activates. So, you flip another blue, and another blue. That is an absurd amount of defense. That is plus 6 defense. That brings his 1 defense to 7, completely blocking all damage that Starscream just did. If you run into these opportunities of, well, man, he just defended all of my damage, how do I do damage? There is another thing called Pierce. Now, Pierce is a damage cap, a kind of reverse damage cap. It is a damage minimum. So, if you have Pierce 3, for instance, if Megatron is swinging into Wheeljack, Wheeljack flipped like a god and has 7 defense. Megatron, he says, I have Pierce 3. It doesn't matter that I flipped all blue. I have Pierce 3, and thus I will be doing at least 3 damage to you. No matter how many defense this guy flips, Pierce will always do Pierce. Pierce, Tough, and Bold can all be added to through upgrades, action cards, abilities on your characters. It all adds together. And it's often the line between victory and defeat. So, it's not uncommon to have someone swing at you for around 13, and say you flipped 1 defense on good old Wheeljack here, and say Wheeljack already had a few damage counters on him already. Oh, my poor man Wheeljack, this is your time. He reaches his HP, and he's knocked out. When a character's knocked out, they go to the KO pile, essentially out of the game. Whereas he's knocked out, he still has plenty of friends left, and you just attacked with Starscream. Starscream, after attacking, becomes tapped. Whenever you attack with a character, you tap them. This means that your opponents can then attack that character. If only 1 character on a field is tapped, you have to attack it. If there are no characters tapped, you can attack anybody. But, say you have Starscream, Thundercracker, and Skywarp on the field, and only Starscream is tapped, then the only option that your opponent has is to attack Starscream. But if you have both Starscream and Skywarp tapped, then they have the option to attack either Starscream or Skywarp. It's up to them. Once all characters are tapped, they untap. But what happens if you're playing Metroplex, who is this monster, this huge boy that just takes up the entire playmat with just his girth? He's the only character you have on the field. What then? What does your opponent do when your only character is tapped and none of theirs are? And the answer is just attack with all of their characters. You cannot opt out of attacking. It is, if it can happen, it has to happen. So, if you have 4 untapped characters and your opponent's character is tapped, it means you have to attack with all 4 characters that turn. you can rack up a ton of damage like that, which is part of the reason why it's better to play wider than taller, but there are exceptions. There are a lot of things that you can do to affect the outcome of battle, and it really just comes down to what you're willing to play on your turn, and what you're willing to play in your deck. So, setting up a game is easy. All you need is your deck, nice and shuffled, and placed with your characters. Your opponent will have done the same. Now, if you notice, all characters start in their vehicle modes, or in some cases, animal modes. Generally speaking, it's the mode with the stars facing up. So, just in case you have any questions of where do I start this character, star side up. So, who decides who goes first? What exactly does that do? Now, some people like flipping a coin. Some people, like myself, like doing high roll. Much better than rock, paper, scissors, in my opinion. High roll is a randomizer where you just take a die, roll it, and then your opponent rolls it, and whoever has the higher number chooses whether or not they want to go first. Of course, the Dinobots got a 9. The Insecticons got a 10. So, the Insecticons will choose to go first. Now, what does that mean? Well, at the start of a game, each player draws 3 cards for their hand. Just like you will. So, since you're going first, you get to take a look at your hand, and you say, wow, look at all these cards that I can't play. Because the person going first can't play any cards in their hands. They can't play any actions, they can't play any upgrades, but they can draw for their turn, and get the look, take a look at it. Hey, look, that's another nice card that I can't play. But they can transform one of their characters and attack. The question of pretty much every game is who. Now, transforming a character is something you can do only once during your turn. You can transform someone from vehicle mode to robot mode, or robot mode to vehicle mode, and you don't have to attack with the same character you transformed. So, for instance, you could transform Kickback and then attack with Ransack. Or transform Scrapnel and then attack with Scrapnel. It's just your own strategy and your own philosophy of gameplay. So, for instance, most characters are more powerful in their robot modes. However, they have more utility in their vehicle modes, and sometimes that's just better. And sometimes you don't want to sacrifice certain characters at a certain point. Like, for instance, you don't want to put too much damage on Barrage, or maybe you want to put some early damage on Ransack. It really depends on what you want to do. So, let's say, for instance, we attack with Scrapnel. We transform him, and we attack with him. Now, we notice that our opponents have all of their characters untapped. That means we get our pick. So, in this case, let's say, let's attack Grimlock. Grimlock seems to be the I want to take damage type, so let's just attack him. Now, certain things, certain keywords in the game will have effects on this. For instance, Brave and Stealth. That's something we're going to get into the second video. But, for right now, this is how it works. You attack the character you want right now. Now, when you attack, you flip the top 2 cards of your deck, and you set them on the field. Hey look, it's a white pip. That means we crit, and we flip 2 more. A Reckless Charge, and a Mining Pick. That's 3 extra damage. That increases our 5 attack into 8. Grimlock has a base of 2 defense, and he flips 1, 2, 3, 4, because he also crit. And wow, that's a lot of attack damage. But unfortunately, he is not attacking, he's defending. And if you notice, he flipped a ready for action that does not have a pip. That doesn't add either any offense or defense, it's just there. Now, because he didn't flip any defensive stats, he only has 2 defense, and you have 8 attack. So, he takes 6 damage, which you represent, in my case, with a dice. Some people prefer little tabs, some people prefer D6s, and some people prefer Skittles. I don't know why the Skittles, but that's something that people can do sometimes. Pretty much, it's however you and your opponent agree to represent damage. In this case, I'll use dice. And, at the end of the fight, all cards that were flipped are scrapped. Now it's the Dinobot's turn. And, at the start of their turn, they look at their hand, they draw a card, and they say, what shall I play? We have 3 upgrades. We have a weapon, we have a utility, we have an armor, and we have an action. We have Dino Chomp. Now, before they decide what to play, they have to realize, because they're going second, that they can only play 1 card. So, even if it's an action or an upgrade, they can still only play 1. Either or. Do they want to give themselves bold 5 at the cost of their hand with Dino Chomp? Or do they want to only take 4 damage during the next turn with Force Field? Or do they want to buff their whole squad with Matrix of Leadership? Well, in this case, since he knows that he has to attack into Scrapnel, because Scrapnel's the only defending character, the only tapped character, he says to himself, well, in that case, I'm going to attach this Force Field to Snarl. I'm going to transform Sludge and then attack with Snarl. Now, Snarl has base of 4, and he's swinging into Scrapnel. Now, Snarl will flip his top 2. Unlucky. No offensive power. So, he just has his 4, and Scrapnel also doesn't have any blues. So, at the end of that battle, neither player has any increase in stats. In that case, Snarl, his base attack, will be paired against Scrapnel's base defense. In this case, 4 and 0. Scrapnel would take 4 damage, but he has an ability. Abilities are pretty much always active unless they have a condition saying when you do something. For instance, Snarl says when you flip to this mode and you have no cards in hand, draw 2 cards. Scrapnel, however, says this can't take more than 3 attack damage from a single attack. So, that 4 attack turns into 3. Now, it's back to your turn. You take a look at your hand, you draw your card, and you say, what am I going to play? Because now you can play both an action and an upgrade during your turn. In that case, you say, well, how about I play an incoming transmission? It's a draw card. You draw 2 cards, and you put those into your hand, and you say, well, it says put 1 card from my hand on top of my deck. This is a fantastic rigging effect. What that does is it essentially puts a card from your hand on top of your deck to rig what you're going to flip on your attack. In this case, we can choose to put this mining pick on top of our deck. What else are we going to attack with? Well, we don't want them to just get away with attacking with Snarl. No, no. We want them to be punished for even considering attaching a force field. We want to do as much damage as possible. But how do we do that? Well, we can transform Scrapnel back to vehicle mode. And it says when you flip to this mode, you may KO one of your Insecticons. If you do, tap an enemy that has 13 stars or fewer. And would you look at that? Grimlock only has 10 stars. So, you can choose yourself. Knock out Scrapnel. And then tap Grimlock, making him open to attack. And now, you get to have a little bit of fun. Let's attack with Ransack while attaching a grenade launcher. Now comes the pain. Ransack attacks Grimlock. He flips 1, 2. Hey, there's a white pip. 3, 4, plus his 3 base. That's 7. And then plus the grenade launcher, which gives plus 4. My. That's swinging for 11. Grimlock flips his defense. 1, 2. That's 3 defense. 3 taken from 11 is 8. Grimlock takes 8 damage and is knocked out. Now, since it's your opponent's second turn of the game, they can play the same cards. They can play the same amount of cards as you for the rest of the game. Both an action and an upgrade. To quickly take you through this turn, let me attach an upgrade to Sludge, transform Snarl, and use Dino Chomp. Dino Chomp says scrap your hand, and one of your characters gets bold 5. That would be Dinobot Sludge. Now Sludge gets to attack. In this case, into Ransack. You flip your first 2, but oh look, Dino Chomp gives you bold 5, which means you flip 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more. Oh, hey, look, it's a crit. We flip 2 more. Now, let's tally up. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And because Matrix gives himself plus 1, that is 7 plus his 5. Well, that's 12. So, that 12 attack can be defended by Ransack, who gets no defense off of that flip. So, his 2 defense taken from 12 is 10, and Ransack is knocked out. You can see how quickly the tides of battle can turn. Either you are super aggressive and you're knocking things out one by one, or you're super defensive and you're not taking any damage whatsoever. Your playstyle dictates what decks you play. What decks do you want to play? Do you want to play Nemesis Prime in his slow, grindy playstyle, with his swinging of huge haymakers? Or are you more like the Insecticons, who love swinging as hard as they can, as fast as they can? Or perhaps you're like the Dinobots, who all like being bold. Whatever your playstyle is, I hope you find the right deck for you, and I hope you build it the best you can. Thank you very much for watching. And I hope this was educational. I hope you know how to play the game now. And if you're interested in learning all of the nuance of how certain cards work, for instance, green pips, how combiners work, how things like that, exactly interact, I hope you check out my next video, where I will be going over the more elaborate subjects of the Transformers trading card game. But until then, thank you very much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like, and if you really enjoy my content, please subscribe and hit that bell icon just in case you want to be notified when my videos go live. And as always, I will see you in the next one.